Hi everyone, my name is Arsum Pathak. I am the Director of Adaptation and Coastal Resilience at National Wildlife Federation, and my work focuses on translating science into community-driven solutions. Before joining NWF, I earned my PhD in environmental science and policy, and my research focused on how climate change and adaptation policies affect small island communities. So that academic background and training, really that's what gave me the foundation to ensure that the science is paired with policy as well as community practice. And of course, a through line of all my past work as well as my current role has been about building partnerships between local leaders, nonprofits, community members, as well as decision makers to ensure that these efforts are not just science based but are also community driven and owned. Over the past few years, I've conducted several place-based climate assessments in this role all across Texas, the Gulf Coast, and the Mississippi River Basin. The goal of these assessments has been to provide localized understanding of climate risks and adaptation options to the communities as well as the decision makers. One example of this work is the Climate Resilience Galveston Report, where we combine regional climate science with stakeholder input to create this community-driven, science-based product, which the goal of which was to be a starting point to spur deeper conversations and action on resilience. I've also led other efforts in other places to advance nature-based solutions, such as our work in Refugio County, Texas, where we work with local communities to co-develop natural infrastructure solutions through a grant provided by National Academies of Sciences. Galveston is a long, narrow barrier island that is on the front lines of climate change. It's already seen more than 2 feet of sea level rise in the last century, and then projections show that the water can rise anywhere from 3 to 8 feet by the end of this century. And just by 2050, so mid-century, it could start facing over 200 high tide flooding days a year. So more than half a year of nuisance sunny day flooding every day. So that makes Galveston one of the most vulnerable places on the Texas coast. And yet, conversations about climate change and long-term adaptation, they haven't always been front and center into local planning. At the same time, Galveston also has tremendous strengths. It has a strong sense of community, a history of recovering after storms, as we've seen with the Great Storm of 1900. It has local organizations that are already working on resilience in different ways. At the same time, it has rich natural infrastructure, wetlands that can hold millions of cubic meters of stormwater, oyster reefs that buffer waves and improve water quality, and dune systems that protect the shoreline while supporting wildlife like sea turtles. If invested in, these natural infrastructure can provide powerful defenses against flooding and storm surge while also supporting wildlife and the local economy. It's a place for both urgent need and also a place for real opportunity, almost a proof of concept for resilience on the Texas coast. And then the lessons that we learn here extends far beyond the island. Communities all across the Gulf and even Atlantic, they are grappling with very similar challenges that can then look for Galveston for how science, nature-based solutions, and community leadership can all come together to chart a more resilient future. The work we did in Galveston, engagement shaped it at every step and process. So before we even drafted the report or any recommendations, we convened a roundtable in 2023 with local leaders, nonprofits, and community members to understand what their priorities and concerns are. So that early input then sort of guided the direction that the assessment would then take. At the same time, we were reviewing over a dozen existing local plans like the city's comp plan, the hazard mitigation plan, and others to make sure that our recommendations were firmly rooted in local ideas and we're not importing that vision from somewhere else. Then, as we drafted the assessment, we kept checking back in with the communities and our local partners to make sure that the science that's coming out of the assessment, that's it's reflecting the lived experiences of these community members. Once the draft was done, we held another roundtable in 2024, again to make sure that local partners could refine and prioritize next steps. And that was a really helpful step for us because it just didn't validate the findings of the assessment, but it also built a lot of local ownership of the product. One really strong outcome of this was that the community members and leaders that we were convening were formalized into this initiative called Convene the Green, which is now a local initiative that is led by Vision Galveston, which was again a local nonprofit and was our local partner in this work, and they are able to carry this work forward. So for us, really engagement wasn't just check the box and done while we drafted this scientific product, but it was the work itself, the conversations that were happening, the trust building, and the partnerships to make sure that the product is useful and usable and is having that real and lasting impact that we'd want in the communities. So I have 3 advices for people working on climate resilience. Number 1, remember that resilience work takes time. In Galveston, we've seen projects that took years to build momentum, but today those are the same projects that work as model for erosion control or habitat restoration. So the idea is that sometimes it can feel slow, but progress is cumulative, and then every conversation that you're having with community partners or every small project step, it builds that long-term momentum. So stay patient but persistent. Second is collaboration, which in my head is everything. I don't think any single organization or sector can solve this alone. In Galveston or our work elsewhere, we've seen that the most durable and long-lasting solutions have come from bringing together very different voices. So community leaders, businesses, insurance sectors, nonprofits, scientists, and then to be able to find common grounds. And that collaboration only works if it is transparent. Too often we've seen groups that are working in silos, or we've seen efforts that are duplicative and not adding. So the idea is to ensure that we are pooling resources, we're being clear about roles, leveraging these different expertise, building trust, and making sure that all these efforts add up to more than the sum of their parts. And then finally, the third one is centering diverse voices. Again, in our Galveston report, we also conducted a social vulnerability analysis, which showed close to 70% of housing units are rentals, and over 60% of residents are people of color on the island. These are the communities that face the highest risk, so any resilience solution won't succeed without their leadership and input. So you want to make sure that you're building with not just trust, but also inclusivity to ensure that these resilience efforts are long lasting and are grounded in community needs and priorities.